Unfortunately, our leaders have been leading with lies. And that's how they managed to create the economy and so on. This is $1 trillion. That's the math. $1 trillion equals $10,000 for each and every one of 100 million workers. Only workers pay. And that means if you have $2 trillion, that means $20,000 for each of 100 million workers. It just, goes up like that. That's the math. That's what those numbers mean. So we're going to take a look at the reality of it. And the reality of it, this is world accounting. So, the United States is not alone. The world claims $454.4 trillion of wealth. This is world wealth. And that equals $56,800 per each and every human face. Babies and all. Each living person. That's 8 billion, which isn't no longer correct. But that's what the numbers are about, 8 billion too. So anyway, so here we have the stock market, and they claim that the stock market is worth $140 trillion right here. So that would be, times 10. That's 1.4 million, I think it is. I don't remember. But anyway, that's not the important part. So let's look at the derivatives market. You're selling credit. That's what they're doing. Derivatives mean you're selling credit. This is and the derivative market is claimed to be over $1 trillion, $1 quadrillion. And $1 quadrillion divided by 8 billion people is $125,000 per human face on the planet. Do you think those numbers are right? Well, that's what they are. So let's look at the reality of it. And the reality of it is that back in 1974, we were 4 billion people. Today, in 1924, 50 years later, we're at 8 billion people, according to 8.2 billion people. So, over those 50 years, for each and every year in 50 years, the population rose by 84 million people. And that includes 1975, 84 million people. Everybody, 84 million people. That's what the actual world population rise is, 84 million. If you want to just go like the universities do and claim that, well, it's only 84 million people per year. But of course, the rise in 1975 is way less than the rise today. Take a look around you. This is humanity talking. Everywhere. And so, here they say that the average per person, per human face, or per citizen, carbon content is 4.3 tons of carbon pollution. So that means it's 3.4 trillion tons of by 8 billion people. And if we want to go by the domestic product, they're creating across the world. They're creating $13,175 worth of products or resources lost per every human face in a finite world, which will end those resources. And then without resources, we have nothing. We get to die. Because it's like being in the desert. What are you going to do? There is nothing. So, the end result of it is that our entire human society is run by the university diploma. There are no leaders without a university diploma, really. And they control everything. They control the media, who decides what you get to know and what you get to hear. I'm not the only one that knows this stuff. Media knows it. And they refused to know it whenever I said, listen, this is bad. And they refused, sent me a letter. One of them sent me a letter that says, we're no longer here. But of course they are, because they didn't want to know. Courts don't want to know, politicians don't want to know, none of it wants to know what is real, because that would ruin the game. And of course, war is a game. We can take more than you can take. And money is a game. We can take more than you can take. And everything in a human society, you want to be a player, you're going to play the game. And the game is, how much can I take from you? And of course, in a world that's overpopulated now, badly, and nobody wants to get out, so, kill 1 billion people. There's still 7.2 billion more left to go, and that's by people who lie. America could be 10 billion, who knows? But what we do know is that nothing is real, nothing is true, and the universities do lead. Whether you like it or not, they do lead. And we must have world law to stop the consequences of what they've done. The consequences, they said, well, there are no consequences to this. The United States has over $100 trillion of debt and claiming nearly $700 trillion of assets. Well, 600 and something, 50 something. I don't really know what it is today, but 100. The debt means that they have stolen from the future. That's what that means. That means that they're leaving that for the children to pay. We don't have to pay, let the children pay. That's what that means. That's what debt is. Let the children pay, the future pay. With whatever resources are left, let them find whatever they can find. But of course, if there is nothing, there is nothing. And the inflation of currency, which is what $700 trillion is, or 650 something, whatever it is currently, that's stealing from the present. That's what they could not collect from reality, what they could not collect by what capitalism is, which means that we have to share the resources accordingly with what we can find. But there's none of that. It's all a lie. Everything is a lie, because the universities want it that way, because that means they don't have to pay. Just like global warming, if we just don't admit to it, we don't have to pay. Just like everything else, they just plain, and the courts are particularly bad. If we just don't admit that the Constitution exists, then we don't have to obey it. That's what they do. They don't admit to it. They will not accept redress, for instance, that is the law of our First Amendment in this USA. And it gives us the legal authority to do things like control our own bankruptcy. We cannot let the banks and stuff, politicians or any of them, control our own bankruptcy. We must control it ourselves. And money is, of course, simply a promise. It's not a reality, it's a promise. A promise of what you will or will not pay in the future. And the promise is already broken. And the promise is that the children will pay for everything. And the promise is that there's an endless amount of resources, but there isn't. And the promise is that world, weapons of mass destruction will never be used, but of course they will, because the world is becoming so overpopulated that we are destroying everything. So the end result of it all is we must make different decisions. That's the foundation of everything. We must make different decisions. We must change what humanity does. No, you can't keep on driving 10 billion miles or whatever it is. No, you can't just take a plane ride to everywhere. No, you can't do 10 billion things. No, you can't, or we all die. It's extinction time. You either decide for life or you decide for death. And if you run away from that truth, that means you chose for death, because you can't get away. It's a world that dies together. Rich or poor don't matter. Whole world dies together. Make a better decision.